Welcome to Strat on the Wall, the podcast that unveils the power of effective goal setting and strategic planning. I'm your host, Tana Capucci, co-founder and co-CEO of One of Many. In this episode, we have the pleasure of being joined by two of our esteemed agile consultants at One of Many, Robin Hyman and Erin Davies. Together, we will explore the challenges they've encountered throughout their careers, shedding light on topics like distinguishing high-value from low-value work.
If people aren't as connected to what the strategy and the long-term aims of the company are, and they're just doing things because they know they should be doing things, that might be really low-value work.
We will analyse the importance of having a value-focused approach.
We all know where we want to be going. It's really important to have kind of fast feedback sort of set up so that you know if things are working or if they're not. So you're kind of validating your strategy as you go along.
By owning the strategy and the implementation of the strategy, it means that you're running to where the ball is going to be, not to where the ball currently is.
As well as the cultural impact of strategy.
Millennial, Gen Z generations who are looking to have jobs that really align and have vision and have meaning. Your strategy is a really good place to bring them along on that journey.
To listen to all these and more, stay tuned into this episode of Strat on the Wall. Welcome everyone, episode 3, Strat on the Wall, one of many coming to you directly from London Wall. If it wasn't apparent in the name of the podcast, Strat on the Wall is named after where we are because we're a transformation agency. We specialize in strategy services and we're based on London Wall. On this episode, we're going to be talking about implementation of strategy at every level. We're going to be discussing why each team in a business needs to own its own strategy and for how it will achieve the desired outcome and demonstrate the impact it can make on an organization. So today I'm joined by my peers and fellow colleagues in the business, Robin Hyman and Erin Davies, and we're going to be expanding on this topic and trying to understand how strategy is implemented at every level, because the title in of itself is quite ambiguous, right? So what do we mean by that? What does implementing strategy at every level what does that actually mean, right? Because as a term, strategy is traditionally always thought about as being something done at the top, right? Or being done by leadership. So we're going to go into that today. We're going to be looking at what it means for us and how we manifest it in our own business and what it can potentially mean from our past experiences as consultants working in organizations, as well as what it might potentially mean for future clients. So we're going to be talking about all of that today. Robin and Erin, do you want to introduce yourselves to our guests or audience?
I'm Robin Hyman. I'm a principal consultant, One of Many. I provide advice and guidance to our clients on things like agile, strategy, OKRs. I've been here for about a year, I think now. Just over a year.
Hello, my name is Erin. I'm one of our agile consultants. I'm one of the new kids in One of Many, but I mostly do a lot of team-based, team-level consultancy and coaching and a little bit chaos.
Thank you for joining me, Robin and Erin.
Welcome.
It's nice to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. If we're talking about strategy at every level, I think what would be helpful to begin with is, what does that mean for you? Implementing strategy at every level.
Let's start with the big questions. What does that mean to me? So I guess for me, there is absolutely no point in strategy happening with 3 people sequestered into a room somewhere and it not being applicable to the people who actually do the work. That to me is what strategy at every level means. Because it's all well and good going like, this is the company goal, but if your developers and your people who do the thing can't connect with that, it's just kind of a pointless exercise. Robin?
Similar. So instead of it being a kind of ivory tower activity, sort of just done by leadership, they do all the thinking, the people do all the working. It's a lot more about getting inputs from everybody. People who are close to the work, who've got insights about the work, connecting purpose to the work, so they're not just following instructions, but there's a purpose, and that they've all fed into the why of what we're doing.
Okay, so in both of what you were saying, this idea of like the connectiveness of multiple people being able to affect strategy and doing it in various parts of an organization. Let me ask you a question. If it was only ever done at the top, which for all intents and purposes is what I think we've been accustomed to for a very long time, like what happens now, like when you're looking at the current trends in workplaces, in our industries, given our backgrounds in transformation, what happens if strategy is only done at the top?
Well, quite often you can end up with a lot of people being really busy, just doing stuff, but the stuff isn't aligned. It's not all pulling in the same direction because people aren't necessarily connected to the strategy. If you ask them what the strategy is, they might not know what it is. They might know 5 minutes after it's been announced or there's been an all hands or something, but 3 months in, can anyone tell you what the strategy is? In my experience, quite often not. So it just, people get disconnected from it and just get caught up in the day to day, and people are just busy doing stuff, and it's just not.
Yeah. So what do you think that looks like when they're just like doing stuff? What does that look like?
Quite often people are really busy. Everyone's really busy, but nothing's actually getting done.
Busy for the sake of being busy.
Yeah. So there's a lot of activity, a lot of business, busyness, and management still aren't achieving the business goals. And then it might look like it's some sort of, the first response might be, why can't my teams deliver? And that type of situation. It might be that it's just too many things happening and there's a lack of focus. And I think if you're involving everybody in strategy, you can achieve more focus and everybody's much more aligned.
And you lose the highest value opportunities if people aren't as connected to what the strategy and the long-term aims of the company are, and they're just doing things because they know they should be doing things. That might be really low value work rather than focusing on the stuff that will have the highest importance. And there's an opportunity loss there. And that's how you end up with things like Monzo taking massive swathes of like the business industry that they're in, because you'll have a challenger come in and completely take something where maybe a traditional bank might have missed it because they're so busy just business as usual ticking along.
People have got their own sort of goals. They're pursuing their own. It's like local optimizations in the farm. People have got their own interests. Their bonus depends on this, and they're going to tick their things off. It's not a sort of joined up effort. And maybe if everyone's got their own separate goals as well, then there's less collaboration happening because people are, trying to achieve their thing to get their bonus rather than a collective push.
So it sounds like it loses its meaning if it's only ever done in one place.
Just gets it all just gets fragmented and diluted.
There's a real cultural impact as well, because with the sort of millennial Gen Z generations who are looking to have jobs that really align and have vision and have meaning and want to feel connected to that, your strategy is a really good place to bring them along on that journey rather than feel like they're a cog in a wheel. If they understand the strategy, they're connected to it, they're implementing it, they're making changes, like that is how you get those sort of younger generations really like culturally and emotionally connecting with their job. So then you have potentially like a impact on turnover and who you hire and things like that as well. So it's more than just the bottom line.
Sure. Shameless plug here. I'm going to plug us.
Of course you are.
So we have a value, right? Collective intelligence. So what we like to do is we believe in strategy every 90 days. So hence the reason why we have a strategy day, because we want it to be something, given the size of company that we're at right now, that we could actually lean into the collective intelligence of the whole company to see how we can affect what we're doing, and we manifest that in the form of OKRs. So I would like to think that we are a little bit different in that sense, but I do want to ask both of you. So knowing the challenges that you mentioned earlier about when it's done in one place, how it loses meaning, how it affects the day-to-day, how it just becomes BAU, what needs to happen, do you think? And you could be thinking about clients in this sense as well. What do you think needs to change? How does everyone how does everyone become part of the strategy? So talking about the Gen Z and the millennials and people looking for more, right? So it's not just the bottom line. How do we help people? How can people help themselves, really? I mean, for everyone who might be listening to this, it could be leaders, could be C-level people, could be department heads. How do we give them the right advice in this instance to be able to take people along on that journey?
I think there's got to be a sort of acknowledgement, and philosophically, that none of us is as smart as all of us in that sense, and that there's a intentional about getting everybody's inputs in, and it's not, you know, hierarchy based and the senior people's opinions are worth more. In practical terms, I think then there's got to be a kind of clarity of intent, and that invitation to everybody. Like, yeah, for example, we do Strat Days. That's an invitation to everybody to contribute. You know, what do you think we should be doing or could be doing, or what are our strengths that we can exploit, or opportunities that we have? You know, so just philosophically, for me, I think it's just having that mindset that we're gonna extend the invitation, not just to the top level of the organisation, but to get everybody's inputs.
I think if you look at how we do it with our OKRs, the advantage of that is then we can break it down further into things that we can do. And I think that's the bit that often gets missed. It's like, it's all well and good having a company say we want to be the number one provider of whatever in our sort of market. But then what does that mean for your individual teams, and actually working with people to go, right, if we're going to do this, then this is how that impacts that. So also like understanding from the other side as well, how what looks like a small project could impact the strategy and achieving it. I'm very aware there's an ambulance screaming in the background.
Oh, we had sirens on the last episode, and what's funny is if anyone listening to this is just going to think that London Wall is very troublesome because of the amount of sirens they hear.
I think we might be near a hospital. I hope. It's not someone coming to arrest us for terrible podcasting. All good.
We do have a police station around the corner as well. I think there's a couple in this area, so it's all fine. But at the end of the day, it's London. We're on London Wall, and it's a Strat on the Wall. Just take it as part of, if anything, it's just showing, it's just us being our authentic selves. Having sirens in the background, but you were saying about...
supporting the teams, understanding how they influence the strategy. Like after the strategy has been quote unquote set, and strategy should be an ever evolving thing. But I think what people don't often understand is how their decisions and how they build the product or how they implement their services actually impact the strategic goals. So it's almost a two-way street. It's not just saying, as you said, collective intelligence in order for us to set our goals, but then it's like, how do we actually influence it? I think that's the step that's often missed, is you'll have someone at sort of C-suite and director level go, right, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're aiming for. Off you go. And then there's no real support on helping people break that down further. So that's often missed. It's just assumed that people know how to pick up a strategy and turn that into projects.
Yeah, I think in part it's a bit of a double-edged sword as well, because if you broaden the invite and you invite more ideas and more inputs, you've got to be on your guard against ending up with a sort of spray and pray sort of strategy where you're just trying to do everything or trying to do too much. And there's a lot of value in having a focused strategy and a narrow focus. So that needs prioritization. So you've got lots of ideas on the table, lots of things you can do. Okay, what are the things we should do? And how do we prioritize, because we have finite resource? So it'd be better to do a few things really well than loads of things kind of in a half-assed sort of manner. So the prioritization, you've got to be a bit ruthless, I think, and sort of not necessarily chuck things out, but go yes, but not yet or whatever. You know, what are we focusing on now? What's the most important thing now?
I mean, that philosophical part of what you were saying earlier around communicating outcomes, essentially,
Yeah.
right? Just getting people to stop talking about the BAU and the initiatives and start communicating outcomes, then drive to the initiatives, and not starting with the initiatives trying to drive an outcome, because then that's just confirmation bias, isn't it? Because then it's my idea is the best idea, and then it becomes a war of ideas on the table as to who's got the best idea, and then who's got the most amount of confirmation bias will typically win, because then they'll put all their effort into validating their idea. But it's all a bit reductive to some extent, isn't it? Because how do we know what problem we're trying to solve, and if we're not thinking about the end user and we've got our own agendas in mind? A lot of what you guys were saying makes me think a lot about the intangibles, right? Because philosophically, to be able to give strategy out to other people, that invitation requires a lot of trust and a lot of self-awareness, right? Self-awareness to say, although I'm senior, I might not have all the right answers. Yeah. And also I trust my people because they're the ones closest to what's actually happening, that they will be able to provide me the right answers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's a big shift, I think, for a lot of people. Especially if, you know, traditional management can be kind of quite hierarchical, quite top down. And there is this sort of Taylorist thing where, we do the thinking, you guys do the work. And I think that's what's breaking down now when you've got more knowledge-based work and you've got a more highly skilled workforce who just aren't motivated by that at all, you know, just being told what to do.
Yeah, and I think to your point about the adaptive strategy, I think that's what we've particularly, I think, since we've been doing One of Many in particular, what I've noticed the most is that adaptive strategy is what's required now. Things are changing a lot. Market conditions are changing a lot. So keeping these really rigid plans, strategy now, let's be honest, typically involves a lot more initiatives than it does outcomes. And that is probably a hindrance to a lot of organization. Hence the example, like with Monzo sweeping up a lot of what's left in the market now from the more traditional institutions, is because they're learning more. They're very customer centric. They publish their product roadmap online for a long period of time, and
that was always so cool, being able to actually see as a customer what they were doing as well, having that engagement.
So let me ask you, what kind of leadership styles do you think? So imagine we've got our listeners now with us, and they ask you, what kind of leadership styles do we need to be using, occupying, standing in? I don't know what the right term is for it, but what kind of leadership styles would you, as consultants, recommend to clients if they said we wanted to start communicating outcomes over deliverables and plans and outputs? What do they need to, what stance could they be in?
There is, if we're looking at adaptive strategy, there's, as you said, there's the element of trust in my people. But the one thing that I think a lot of people struggle with is the idea of letting go of their ideas. So, and I think that's where a lot of the time people get really emotionally attached to the strategy they have set. And if you aren't able or willing to say, I might be wrong, it's going to be really hard for you to do that, more like bringing everyone together.
I get that. I get that.
And I think that's
my idea is the best idea.
That's a big cultural shift for a lot of people who've maybe been in this industry for a very long time and worked their way up, and they've had to be the boss, and it doesn't work anymore. Like, the collective intelligence thing doesn't work when you've decided your idea is better than everybody else's.
Yeah, so there's that kind of, I guess,
humility?
a bit more, humility, a bit more respect for other people.
Is it humility or is it a bit of fear? Because I think if I've spent my whole career on the basis that I've always got the right answer and it's gotten me where it's gotten me to, then to step into something else it will be a little bit daunting. I mean, understandably so.
Yeah,
it's a bit like the what's his name? You know, the Unlearn book. There was that book, that Unlearn. People who've been successful with a certain approach, so maybe that more sort of traditional approach, get to a certain point, they've got to unlearn some things. It's as much about unlearning old habits as learning new ones. But I think the the approach to me, I think, has got to be much more intent based. So what am I trying to achieve? And and inviting others to contribute and genuinely listen, not inviting them and they're just going, no, and we're just going to do what we said anyway. But a genuine acceptance of other perspectives.
All right, so be more facilitative, be a bit more collaborative.
Yeah, it's fine to say you don't know. I don't know. You might not know the answers. You haven't got to walk in and be the boss and go, right, listen to me. We're all going to do what I say. I'm leading. It's much more I'm eliciting from the crowd, sourcing the wisdom of the crowd. I guess is maybe a sort of stance to be in.
Maybe a little bit
That's
more
a stance.
experimental as well. Sort of like let's try some things out and see if it gets us to where we want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things really that we think we have an answer for, we're striving for answers for, aren't really knowable. I think everything is so complex anyway, and the only way really to know is to experiment, try things, see what works.
Best guess.
Yeah. Well, do lots of experiments, see what works. Do more of the things that do work and less of the things that don't work, and just have that as a kind of mindset. So you're finding your way through. You've got your North Star, you know where you want to go, but the exact route, you'll have to find your way through it because you can't plot it in advance because you just don't know. You can't know.
Is anyone capable of doing strategy?
Sorry, I heard that question. The emphasis is very different depending on how you say that. Is anyone capable? I'm sure there are people capable of it. No, I think people strategize all the time. They just maybe might not realize that what they're doing is strategizing.
Yeah, because the reason why I ask is because we've been focusing on.
Yeah.
We generally focus on leaders, right? And this conversation in particular is focused on being done at the top. Is that a good or bad thing? What stances do leaders need to step into? How might they empower their teams? But then it begs to ask the question, is anyone capable of doing it? And if the answer is, we're talking about adaptive strategy and we're talking about complex environments and how things are changing and moving towards outcomes. So is anyone capable of it? And should that be then available to everyone to be able to influence?
I think anytime someone has to make a decision between doing two things, they are making strategic decisions. They might not understand that is a strategic way of thinking. But if you've got two tasks in front of you and you have only a finite amount of time between now and the end of the day, making that choice is making a strategic choice. What is missing there is maybe people aren't thinking aligning it to the goal, but they are thinking what's the best use of my time, what's the most useful thing for me to be doing, like that sort of thing. Like what can I defer? That is strategic thinking.
Yeah, but I'm coming back to your point about the double-edged sword. So if we make it available to everyone, because
I mean, and I it did make me think when you said that, because I do think that some people are more strategic than others. Yeah, some people are more forward-looking than others, and they've got vision. Some people are more reactive by their nature, and they're just they've got a shorter horizon that they're looking at, and they're just responding to things and making point decisions, small ones there, but the small decisions aren't heading in a specific direction. Some people have got that more, this is where I'm heading, and their decisions are influenced by the North Star.
Even those smaller decisions, right, to what you were saying, they do all have an impact somewhere, but maybe people don't know.
Yeah, some of them aren't intentional about going in a certain direction.
Right. It's the same way when we talk with developers. Every time someone commits a line of code, they're essentially affecting the architecture, right? It's always changing. Similarly with the strategy, every time you deliver something or anything you implement anywhere in your business, it's going to have an impact somewhere. It's going to have some type of outcome either towards the business or towards the customer, but we don't make it aware, in a sense that we don't visualize the changes that we're making. We don't make them available to people to understand the impact. So Yeah, quite a philosophical question at this point. You know,
Yeah, I think
everyone
anyone's-
can. It's just who's aware that they're doing it.
So when you say doing strategy, that's what sort of threw me a little bit, because then
Yeah.
I think anyone can contribute to strategy. Whether
Okay.
they can do it single-handedly, I think there's a collective effort, and some people in the collective are more strategic thinkers than others, and just by nature. So yeah, so doing strategy, I don't know, contributing to, definitely yes.
This has been a very great conversation. It's been very fruitful. But if we're coming back to like the original title, implementing strategy at every level, how and why a team needs to own its own strategy and achieve it. If I could get from both of you your top 3 takeaways, right? Why is it important for a team to own its own strategy and implement it? And how does that affect a wider organization? Your top 3 takeaways so that we can give our listeners insights from the front line, from our practitioners, from the people who are actually interfacing, because you're both working with very large organizations at the moment and you are affecting strategy. So what would be your top 3, off the basis of this conversation, top 3 bits of advice, if you will? We won't call it consulting because we don't have any commercial agreements, and there'd have to be a bunch of like small print and little T's and C's in here because we are consultants, but this is just advice. This is us having a conversation. So it's me asking you. So you're giving me advice right now, but by default, our listeners are having an ear into this conversation as well.
Right.
Who wants to go first?
I'm just trying to figure out exactly how to phrase it. But I tend to go into teams with a value-focused approach, and I think owning your strategy helps that. And by owning the strategy and the implementation of the strategy and stuff like that, it allows you to use a football analogy. It means that you're running to where the ball is going to be, not to where the ball currently is.
Okay.
So when teams
Gotcha.
own their strategy, they are able to pivot very, very quickly and be more value focused rather than task driven. And I think that's what we need, is people to be more looking at the value of the work rather than doing the tick box exercise. And it just gets more cultural buy-in, I think.
Nice.
And
I think that's. I like the metaphor of where the ball will be, rather than where the ball is.
Oh,
now.
I have blatantly stolen that from a GitHub conference from about 6 years ago, and I've stuck to it ever since. So you can thank the GitHub guys for that one.
Nice. I like it. I like the because it's a gamble, right? Half the time, football is a lot about. I mean, we don't need to deep dive into it now, but a lot of it is about positioning and anticipation. So it's where you want to be rather than where you are now. So you move to progress forward, right? Because you want to score a goal. You have to kind of anticipate where the ball's going to end up to put you in the best possible position to score. I love it.
yeah, you don't
I
just
think
have
it's
the whole team
fantastic.
chasing the ball. And
Yeah, because all you're going to do is get tired.
Yeah.
You get tired very quickly.
Yeah.
And you'll leave lots of gaps behind in defense, because if you're constantly running towards the ball, you won't. Yeah, I love it.
Thanks, GitHub.
Yeah, I think that's a great metaphor.
I think as well as being clear, about intent, setting clear intent, so we've got direction, so we all know where we want to be going, and having an experimental attitude. I think it's really important to have kind of fast feedback sort of set up so that you know if things are working or if they're not, so you're kind of validating your strategy as you go along. So there's no point going along if you can't see whether this is working, then you just keep, banging your head against that wall. Just keep on wasting energy in a fruitless direction. So I think that would be one of my top things would be feedback. Where's your data coming from? How do you know things are working or not?
I think that's really useful insight, because I think both of you have spoken to the idea of focusing forward, focus more on where you want to try and get to. But in the pursuit of that particular outcome, how are you validating where you are now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of, I can never pronounce their names properly, but the people who created the TPS, the Toyota production system, Takeuchi and Nonaka, if I pronounce it
yeah.
well. I hope we have some comments on this video and someone corrects me. But they talk a lot about this idea of being the idealistic pragmatist.
Right.
So be tethered to a future state, but also be very cognizant of where you are now. And I think it's the where you are now part where the data is very important. So use the data to inform what you're doing because you want to be able to pivot and change, but don't lose sight of where you're going.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, it's keeping that in front and center. You know, that's in mind. So all the small decisions that you're taking day to day, they're with that in mind, rather than just, you know, immediate short term.
And I think that's true for individuals as well as it is for teams, and it is for leaders, and it is for any other business function. If you can maintain that balance between where we're trying to get to and where we are now, and how do we make decisions based on what we know today, and how does that then contribute to where we're going, and then how do we learn, that iterative feedback cycle is really important, because that's how the strategy continually gets adapted, right? It's through constant feedback.
Yeah, without feedback, you can't learn. You know, if you're just sort of, if you're throwing darts on the board and you can see, okay, I need to adjust how I'm throwing. If you switch the lights off, you're not going to get any better with each throw. You just keep throwing. So you need feedback constantly, and quick feedback.
Yep. I think that's a perfect point to end this podcast on. So feedback, we're learning. We want you to help us learn as well. We need feedback. So
Please comment and subscribe.
yeah, please comment and subscribe. Please let us know how we're doing. No, thank you very much, both. I think very insightful conversation. Really difficult topic to explore, you know, without going into specific use cases. So being able to speak to these ideas and just trying to explore what it means. I love the metaphors we've used today as well. So thank you for sharing. And for everyone who's listening in, I hope this has been as useful for you as it has been for me. So thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. Any parting words from Robin and Erin? Thank you for being guests today as well, if I haven't already said that. It's been great to have different people on the podcast, getting a bit bored of just talking to Mike. So thank you for that.
Thanks for inviting me to do that. You know, this is the first time I've involved in one of these type of things.
Yeah.
So, you know,
it's an experiment.
Do more and practice and get good at it.
Yeah, it's our experiment for sure.
Yeah.
What he said.
Any final words?
No, I don't have any final nuggets of random analogies, but no, it's been interesting. Strategy is a big scary term, and I think anything we can do to break it down a little bit is always a good thing. So,
Nice. All right, very positive way to end it. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to Strat on the Wall, your go-to podcast for organizational transformation insights. If you're looking for help in any of the areas we discuss on the podcast around agile transformation, strategy implementations, and OKR expertise, please reach out to us at www.oneofmany.com. Or better yet, click on the Talk to an Expert button and one of our consultants will be in touch, happy to help in understanding your opportunities and challenges.